Why some people become wealthy while others never do. The janitor who died a millionaire. Imagine attending two funerals. The first belongs to a Wall Street executive, a Harvard graduate, a brilliant investor, a financial expert, the kind of person everyone assumes has life completely figured out. Now imagine the second funeral. It belongs to a janitor, a quiet man who spent most of his life sweeping floors, fixing cars, and living in a small town. If I asked you, which of these two men died wealthier, what would your answer be? Most people wouldn't hesitate. The executive, of course. After all, intelligence creates wealth, education creates wealth, expertise creates wealth, right? Not always, because in a small town in Vermont lived a man named Ronald Reed. For decades, almost nobody noticed him. He drove used cars, he wore inexpensive clothes, he lived a simple, ordinary life. Nothing about him suggested extraordinary wealth. Yet, when Ronald Reed died in 2014, people discovered something almost unbelievable. The janitor had quietly accumulated more than $8 million. No lottery ticket, no inheritance, no billion-dollar startup, no secret formula, just patience, discipline, and time. But here's where the story becomes even more fascinating. Around that very same period, some of the world's brightest financiers were managing billions of dollars. They had more education, more experience, more resources, more opportunities, and yet many of them lost everything. How could a janitor succeed where financial experts failed? That single question lies at the heart of one of the most influential books ever written about money. Because money isn't just about mathematics. It isn't just about spreadsheets or investment formulas. Money is about behavior. It's about emotion. It's about the stories we tell ourselves. And most importantly, it's about psychology. Today we're taking a deep dive into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, a book that reveals why building wealth has far less to do with intelligence than most people imagine, and why ordinary people often outperform financial geniuses. By the end of this video, you may never look at money the same way again. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Nobody is crazy. Imagine two men, both are intelligent, both work hard, both genuinely want financial security, yet they make completely opposite decisions with money. The first man invests aggressively. Every spare dollar goes into the stock market. He believes risk is necessary. The second man keeps most of his savings in cash. He doesn't trust the market. To him, security comes first. So, who's right? Most people immediately pick a side. But Morgan Housel offers a completely different perspective. Neither of them is crazy, because every financial decision is shaped by personal experience. Let's travel back in time. Picture a young boy growing up during the Great Depression. He watches neighbors lose their homes. He sees banks collapse. He hears adults whispering about unemployment and hunger. Day after day, life teaches him the same lesson. The world is fragile. Money can disappear. Security matters. Now fast forward 30 years. That little boy has become a successful adult. The economy is booming. Businesses are thriving. Opportunity seems to be everywhere. And yet, he still avoids risky investments. People call him overly cautious. But from his perspective, he's being perfectly rational, because his entire life taught him that disaster can arrive without warning. Now imagine another child. This one grows up during an economic boom. Jobs are everywhere. Businesses expand. The stock market keeps climbing. Every experience teaches a different lesson. Opportunity is everywhere. Risk creates reward. Years pass. That child grows up and invests confidently. Some people call him reckless, but he isn't reckless. He's simply responding to the world he experienced. And that's the lesson. Nobody makes financial decisions using spreadsheets alone. People make decisions based on memories, fear, hope, pain, experience. That's why two intelligent people can study the exact same investment and reach completely opposite conclusions. They're not just looking at numbers, they're looking at life. Now think about your own relationship with money. Maybe your parents struggled financially. Maybe they worried about paying the bills. Maybe every purchase had to be carefully planned. If that's true, there's a good chance those experiences still influence your decisions today, even if you now earn more money than your parents ever did. Or maybe you grew up with financial stability. Perhaps money was never a major concern. Without even realizing it, that experience shaped your comfort with risk. The truth is, every financial decision has a backstory. And once you understand that, everything changes. You stop judging people. You stop asking, why would someone make such a stupid decision? Instead, you ask, what experiences led them here? That simple shift creates wisdom, not only in finance, but in life. And it reveals an even deeper truth. Success with money isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about understanding your own behavior. Because the greatest financial battle you will ever fight isn't against the market, it's against yourself. And that's where our next lesson begins. Because if behavior matters more than intelligence, then we need to understand the two invisible forces that shape every success story: luck and risk. Chapter 2, Luck versus Risk. Imagine standing at the finish line of a marathon. Thousands of runners cross before you. Some are celebrated as champions. Others stumble across the line, completely exhausted, and many never reach the finish at all. Now imagine trying to understand their stories. You interview the winner. He tells you about discipline, training, sacrifice, early mornings, mental toughness. And he's right. Every one of those things mattered. But what if he had twisted his ankle the night before the race? What if he had been born with a serious illness? What if just one circumstance had been different? Would the outcome have changed? Probably. And that's where money becomes far more complicated. Because when we look at successful people, we usually see only skill. And when we look at failure, we usually see only mistakes. But life is rarely that simple. Hidden behind every success story is a force we rarely acknowledge: luck. And hidden behind every failure is another force: risk. The challenge is that both are invisible. Let's look at one of history's most famous entrepreneurs. Imagine a young man obsessed with computers. He spends countless hours learning how they work. He studies relentlessly. He dreams far bigger than anyone around him. Years later, he becomes one of the richest people on earth. Most people see only the hard work, and they're not wrong. His hard work absolutely mattered. But consider this: he was born at the exact moment computers were about to change the world. He attended one of the very few schools with access to advanced computers. He lived in a country filled with opportunity, and he discovered his passion at precisely the right moment in history. His skill mattered, but so did luck. Now don't misunderstand. Luck doesn't diminish achievement. It simply reminds us that outcomes are never entirely under our control. And the same is true in the opposite direction. Think about a small business owner. He works 16 hours every day. He serves his customers well. He treats people fairly. He makes responsible decisions. Then, without warning, a recession arrives, or a pandemic, or an unexpected crisis. Within months, everything is gone. Sometimes risk arrives without invitation. Morgan Housel's message isn't that success is random. It's that every outcome is shaped by factors we cannot fully control. And forgetting that can be dangerous, because when we credit every success entirely to skill, we become arrogant. And when we blame every failure entirely on mistakes, we become judgmental. The truth almost always lives somewhere between the two. Imagine two investors. Both buy the same stock. Both study the same information. Both make the same decision. One becomes wealthy. The other loses money. Why? Because timing was different. Circumstances were different. Random events changed everything. That's why investing is so humbling. You can make a brilliant decision and still get a terrible outcome. And you can make a poor decision and still get lucky. The outcome never tells the whole story. This lesson becomes even more important when we choose our role models. Every year, millions of people search for the secrets of successful individuals. What time do they wake up? What books do they read? How do they invest? Which habits made them wealthy? But here's what most people miss. When you study successful people, you're studying the survivors. You're seeing the winners, not the thousands who walked similar paths and never made it. Imagine standing before a towering mountain. At the summit stands one climber. Everyone interviews him. Everyone wants his advice. Everyone studies the path he took. What they never see are the countless climbers who walked similar paths but never reached the summit. The survivor gets the microphone. The others fade into history. That's why blindly copying successful people can be dangerous. Instead, study timeless principles: patience, discipline, consistency, humility. Those principles remain valuable regardless of luck. Because while you can't control the outcome, you can always control your behavior. And behavior is where real power lives. The greatest investors understand this. They don't build plans assuming everything will go perfectly. They build plans expecting uncertainty because they know luck can disappear and risk can arrive at any moment. Think about that for a second. Most people spend their lives trying to predict the future. The wise spend their lives preparing for a future they cannot predict. That's an entirely different mindset, and it leads to one powerful realization. You don't need to be perfect to succeed. You don't need to predict every market crash. You don't need to foresee every opportunity. You simply need to stay in the game long enough for good decisions to compound. Because in finance, survival is a superpower. The people who stay in the game the longest often win. Not because they're the smartest, not because they're the luckiest, but because they understand a truth most people overlook. Life will always contain luck. Life will always contain risk. The goal isn't to eliminate either one. The goal is to build a life strong enough to withstand both. And that brings us to one of the most dangerous traps in the entire world of money. A trap that has destroyed fortunes, ended careers, and convinced countless people that no amount is ever enough. That trap is called more. Chapter 3. The most dangerous word in finance. More. In the summer of 1999, a private dinner party was held in New York. The room was filled with successful investors, business leaders, financial elites, people who had already won the game of money, or so it seemed. During the conversation, someone pointed toward a billionaire hedge fund manager, a man who had earned more money in a single year than most people could earn in several lifetimes. One guest quietly smiled. Then he said something remarkable. "Yes, but I have something he will never have." The table fell silent. Someone finally asked, "What is that?" His answer was just one word. Enough. A simple word, only 6 letters, yet perhaps the hardest financial lesson any human being will ever learn. Because most people believe their money problems come from having too little. But many of the greatest financial disasters begin with wanting too much. Imagine a man standing alone in the middle of a desert. He's thirsty, desperately thirsty. Someone hands him a glass of water. That water saves his life. Now imagine he keeps drinking and drinking and drinking. Eventually, the very thing that saved him begins to harm him. Money works the same way. A certain amount creates security, freedom, comfort, peace of mind. But beyond a certain point, something changes. Money stops solving problems and quietly begins creating new ones. The desire for more becomes endless. A bigger house, a newer car, a higher salary, a larger investment portfolio, a more luxurious lifestyle. Every achievement feels incredible for a while. Then the mind adapts. Yesterday's dream becomes today's normal, and the chase begins again. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. Morgan Housel calls it one of the most dangerous forces in finance, because comparison has no finish line. Imagine earning $50,000 a year. Then imagine earning $100,000. You feel successful until you meet someone earning $200,000. Suddenly, your success feels smaller. The person earning $200,000 looks at someone making $1 million. The millionaire looks at a billionaire. The billionaire looks at another billionaire with a larger yacht. And so, the ladder keeps growing. The destination keeps moving. And the person chasing it spends a lifetime running toward a horizon that can never be reached. History is filled with stories like this. People who already had everything, yet lost it all because they wanted just a little more profit, a little more status, a little more recognition, a little more wealth. The tragedy wasn't that they lacked abundance. The tragedy was that abundance stopped feeling like enough. Think back to our opening story, Ronald Reed, the quiet janitor who built millions. Do you know one of the biggest reasons he succeeded? He never felt the need to impress anyone. He wasn't competing with his neighbors. He wasn't trying to look wealthy. He wasn't chasing status. He simply invested consistently. Then he allowed time to do its work. Now compare that to countless high earners. People making 6 figures, 7 figures, sometimes even more. Yet somehow they remain trapped. Not because they don't earn enough, but because their lifestyle grows just as fast as their income. Every raise creates a bigger obligation. Every success creates a bigger expectation. On paper, they become wealthier. In reality, they become less free. This is one of the greatest ironies of modern life. People spend years sacrificing their freedom to buy things they never truly needed. Things purchased to impress people they don't even like. And here's the cruelest part. The people they're trying to impress are busy trying to impress someone else. It's a giant theater of comparison. Everyone is performing. Almost nobody is satisfied. So, how do you escape? You define your own version of enough, not society's, not your neighbor's, yours. Enough doesn't mean giving up on ambition. It doesn't mean settling. It means knowing where to stop. It means understanding that every choice has a cost. More money often demands more time, more stress, more responsibility, more sacrifice. Sometimes the pursuit of more steals the very things money was supposed to give you: peace, freedom, time with family, health, joy. The wisest investors understand this. They know wealth isn't measured by how much you accumulate. It's measured by what you no longer need to chase. Because the moment you can honestly say, "I have enough," everything changes. You stop making desperate decisions. You stop taking unnecessary risks. You stop gambling your future for one more gain. And for the first time, money becomes a tool instead of a master. But if learning to say enough protects wealth, what actually creates wealth? What was the invisible force that transformed a quiet janitor into a millionaire? The answer isn't genius. It isn't luck. And it certainly isn't working 100 hours a week. It's something far less exciting, yet far more powerful. A force so extraordinary that Albert Einstein is often credited with calling it the 8th wonder of the world: compounding. And once you truly understand it, you'll never look at time the same way again. Chapter 4: The Hidden Superpower of Compounding. Imagine I offered you a choice. Option 1, $1 million, right now, No waiting, no conditions. The money appears in your bank account today. Or, option 2, a single penny, just one. But that penny doubles in value every day for 30 days. Most people don't even hesitate. They choose the $1 million. After all, it's $1 million. What could possibly compete with that? A penny? It sounds almost ridiculous. And yet, by the end of 30 days, that tiny penny becomes more than $5 million. Not because it started large, not because it was special, but because it was given something extraordinarily powerful: time. And that is the secret of compounding. Compounding is one of those ideas that seems simple until you truly understand what it means. At first, the growth looks tiny, almost invisible, even disappointing. Then something changes. The curve begins to rise. Growth starts accelerating, and what once seemed insignificant becomes extraordinary. The problem isn't the math, it's us. Our brains aren't designed to appreciate slow progress. We're wired for immediate results. We plant a seed today and expect a tree tomorrow. We exercise for 1 week and expect a transformation. We invest for 1 year and expect wealth. When those results don't arrive quickly, most people quit. They walk away just before compounding begins to work. And that's exactly why so few people ever benefit from it. Imagine 2 friends, James and Michael. Both begin their financial journey with the same dream. James starts investing. At 25, he invests consistently for 10 years. Then he stops. Michael waits. He doesn't begin until he's 35. But once he starts, he invests consistently until retirement. So, who ends up with more money? Most people choose Michael. After all, he invested for much longer. But surprisingly, James often wins. Not because he invested more money, but because he gave his investments more time to grow. Time. Not talent, not intelligence, not perfect timing. Time. This is one of the most powerful lessons in the psychology of money. The biggest returns rarely come from extraordinary actions. They come from ordinary actions, repeated for extraordinary lengths of time. Now, think back to Ronald Reed, the quiet janitor who died a millionaire. Many people hear his story and assume there must have been a secret, a hidden stock tip, a lucky investment, some kind of financial genius. But there wasn't. His strategy was almost boring. He bought quality companies. He spent less than he earned. He remained patient, and he repeated that process for decades. That was it. No magic formula, no revolutionary strategy, no get-rich-quick scheme. Just consistency, year after year, decade after decade. While others searched for shortcuts, Ronald trusted time, and time rewarded him. This is where most people make a critical mistake. They become obsessed with finding the perfect investment, the perfect stock, the perfect opportunity, the perfect moment to buy. But history suggests something surprising. The greatest investors aren't always the ones who make the best decisions. They're the ones who avoid interrupting compounding, because compounding is fragile. It needs time, and time demands patience. Imagine planting an oak tree. Every few days you dig it up to check the roots. You move it, you plant it somewhere else. You second guess every decision. Would that tree ever grow? Of course not. And yet, many investors treat their money the very same way. They panic during market declines. They chase the latest trends. They jump from one strategy to another. Without realizing it, they interrupt the very process they're trying to benefit from. Compounding rewards patience, and patience has become increasingly rare. The modern world celebrates speed, faster internet, faster delivery, faster success, faster results. But wealth moves in the opposite direction, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day it doesn't. Think about bamboo. For years, after it's planted, almost nothing appears above the ground. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass. It looks like nothing is happening. Then, almost overnight, it begins to grow rapidly. What people don't see is what happened beneath the surface. For years, the roots were growing stronger. Compounding works the same way. For a long time, progress feels insignificant. Then, eventually, the results look miraculous. But they were never miracles. They were simply the reward for patience. That's why so many people misunderstand wealth. They see the outcome, not the decades that created it. They see the millionaire, not the 30 years of patience. They see the successful company, not the years of uncertainty. They see the giant oak tree, not the tiny seed. Compounding teaches us a profound truth. Success is rarely the result of one defining moment. More often, it's the result of thousands of ordinary moments, stacked one upon another. A small investment, repeated consistently. A good habit, repeated consistently. A wise decision, repeated consistently. Day by day, month by month, year by year, until something remarkable emerges. And perhaps that's why compounding is so powerful, because it rewards behavior more than brilliance. You don't need to be the smartest investor in the room. You don't need a PhD in finance. You don't need insider information. You simply need the discipline to stay the course. And when you do, time stops being your enemy. It becomes your greatest ally. But here's the fascinating twist. If compounding is the engine that builds wealth, why do so many wealthy people look ordinary? Why don't they always drive luxury cars? Why don't they always live in enormous mansions? The answer reveals one of the greatest misunderstandings about money. Because true wealth is often invisible. And that's where our story goes next. Chapter 5. Why Wealth is Invisible. Let me ask you a question. When you see someone driving a brand new luxury car, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Successful? Rich? Wealthy? Most of us think exactly that. It's natural. We see expensive things and assume they belong to wealthy people. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What you're seeing is spending, not wealth. And those are two very different things. Imagine walking through an affluent neighborhood, massive homes, luxury cars, designer clothes. Everything appears to scream success. But appearances can be deceiving, because many of those visible symbols were purchased with money that no longer exists. The moment someone buys a luxury car, that money is gone. You can see the car, but you'll never see the money that paid for it. And that's the great paradox of wealth. The things we associate with being wealthy are often the very things that reduce wealth. Morgan Housel puts it beautifully. Wealth is what you don't see. Think back to Ronald Reed, the millionaire janitor. Nobody looked at him and thought, that man is worth millions. Why? Because his wealth was invisible. It wasn't parked in his driveway. It wasn't hanging in his closet. It wasn't displayed on social media. His wealth existed where truly wealthy people keep it, in assets, investments, future opportunities, freedom. And that creates a strange problem. Human beings naturally admire what they can see: the mansion, the sports car, the designer watch, the luxury vacation. But almost nobody admires the person who quietly invests every single month. Why? Because patience is invisible. Discipline is invisible. Financial security is invisible. A retirement account doesn't turn heads. A diversified portfolio doesn't attract attention. And yet, those invisible things are often far more valuable than the visible ones. Imagine two neighbors. One drives a luxury SUV. The other drives a 10-year-old sedan. Most people assume the first person is wealthier. But what if the SUV owner is drowning in debt? What if every paycheck disappears into loan payments? And what if the second neighbor quietly owns a 7-figure investment portfolio? Suddenly, the story changes. The person who appears wealthy may actually be financially fragile, and the person who appears ordinary may possess extraordinary financial strength. The problem is that society rewards appearances, not reality. From a young age, we're taught to associate success with visible possessions. Advertisements reinforce it. Movies reinforce it. Social media amplifies it. Every day, we're surrounded by carefully curated images of lives that seem perfect. And over time, something dangerous begins to happen. We stop buying things because we need them, and start buying them because of the feeling they promise. Respect, status, admiration, recognition. But here's the irony. When you buy an expensive car, hoping people will admire you, most people aren't admiring you at all. They're imagining themselves behind the wheel. They're not thinking, look how successful that person is. They're thinking, I wish that were mine. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings of human behavior. People don't want your possessions because they admire you. They want your possessions because they imagine those possessions will make them admired. And once you understand that, something remarkable happens. You stop spending your life performing for an audience that isn't really watching. You stop trying to prove your success through purchases. You stop confusing attention with achievement. And that's where real wealth begins. Because wealth isn't about displaying resources. It's about having resources. Resources that create options. Resources that create resilience. Resources that create freedom. Imagine two people. The first earns an impressive income, but spends almost all of it. The second earns less, but quietly saves, invests, and lets time work. Who feels wealthier during good times? Probably the first. But who feels wealthier when life becomes difficult? Almost certainly the second. Because wealth isn't measured by income. It's measured by how long you can maintain your life without needing another paycheck. That's a very different definition, and perhaps a far more useful one. Think about the storms that every life eventually faces: economic downturns, job losses, health emergencies, unexpected crises. When those moments arrive, nobody asks how expensive your watch is. Nobody cares about your car. Nobody notices your designer clothes. What matters is flexibility. What matters is security. What matters is having choices. And choices come from wealth, not the appearance of wealth. The richest person in the room isn't always the one attracting attention. Sometimes it's the quiet individual nobody notices. The person who understands one simple truth. Money's greatest value isn't what it allows you to buy. It's what it allows you to avoid. Stress, desperation, dependence, fear. And that realization leads us to perhaps the most important lesson in this entire book. Because if wealth is invisible, if wealth creates choices, if wealth creates freedom, then what is money really for? The answer isn't luxury. It isn't status. It isn't possessions. The highest dividend money can ever pay is something far more valuable. Freedom. Chapter 6. Freedom is the ultimate dividend. Imagine, it's Monday morning. Your alarm rings. You open your eyes, and almost instantly, a familiar feeling appears. Stress. Not because you hate your job, not because you're lazy, but because you don't have a choice. You have to go. You have to work. You have to earn. You have to keep running. Now imagine a different morning. The same alarm rings. The same sun rises. But this time something has changed. You have options. You can work if you want to. You can rest if you need to. You can spend time with your family. You can pursue something meaningful. You can say no to the things that no longer matter. Suddenly, life feels completely different. The difference isn't money. The difference is freedom. And according to Morgan Housel, freedom is the highest dividend money can ever pay. Not luxury, not status, not prestige, freedom. Think about it. Why do people want financial success? Most would answer a bigger house, a better car, a more comfortable life. But keep asking, why? Why do you want those things? Eventually, every answer leads to the same destination: freedom. Why do you want more income? To create more choices. Why do you want financial security? To reduce stress. Why do you invest? To gain control over your time. At its core, almost every financial goal is really a freedom goal. And that's why some wealthy people remain unhappy, because they confuse money with freedom. They earn more, spend more, upgrade more, yet somehow feel more trapped. Why? Because their lifestyle expands faster than their freedom. Imagine a successful executive. He earns hundreds of thousands every year. From the outside, his life looks perfect. A beautiful home, a luxury car, a prestigious career. But behind the scenes, he's exhausted. Every month demands another large paycheck. Every expense creates pressure. Every decision is shaped by obligation. He has money, but very little freedom. Now imagine someone else. Their income is lower, their lifestyle is simpler, but they have savings, investments, very little debt, and something priceless, financial flexibility. If life changes, they can adapt. If a workplace becomes toxic, they can leave. If an opportunity appears, they can take it. If family needs them, they can be present. So, who is truly wealthier? The answer becomes clearer with age, because eventually, most people discover that the things money buys are never as valuable as the choices money creates. Let's talk about one of the most overlooked forms of wealth, the ability to control your time. Time is the only asset every human being receives equally, rich or poor, young or old, successful or struggling. Every day, each of us receives 24 hours, no more, no less. And once those hours pass, they're gone, forever. You can earn more money, you can build another business, you can recover from financial losses, but you can never recover yesterday. That's why the ability to decide how you spend your time is one of the greatest forms of wealth imaginable. Think back to Ronald Read. What made his story so remarkable? It wasn't simply that he accumulated millions. It was that his investments eventually bought him independence, the ability to live life on his own terms. And that is the real purpose of wealth. Not to impress strangers, not to win comparisons, not to collect possessions, but to create autonomy, the ability to wake up and choose. Choose where you work. Choose who you spend time with. Choose how you live. Choose what truly matters. Psychologists have spent decades studying happiness, and again, they arrive at the same conclusion. People are happiest when they feel in control of their lives, not when they're richest, not when they're most famous, not when they own the most things, when they have control. And that's exactly what financial freedom provides. Control over your time, control over your decisions, control over your future. Now, this doesn't mean you need millions of dollars. That's another misunderstanding. Freedom isn't always about having more. Sometimes it's about needing less. The less you depend on constant consumption, the more freedom you naturally gain. The less debt you carry, the more choices you create. The fewer obligations you have, the stronger your position becomes. Freedom grows in the space between what you earn and what you require. Think about that for a moment. Freedom grows in the space between what you earn and what you require. That's a powerful idea, because it means freedom doesn't begin after you become wealthy. It begins the moment you create margin. Every dollar you save creates more flexibility. Every investment creates more options. Every act of financial discipline purchases a small piece of future independence. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day the difference is impossible to ignore. You can see this principle everywhere. The entrepreneur who can reject a bad deal, the employee who can walk away from a toxic workplace, the parent who can spend more time with their children, the individual who chooses meaningful work instead of simply profitable work. All of them possess something more valuable than money itself: choice. And choice is freedom. Perhaps that's why some of the happiest people aren't the richest. They've simply aligned their finances with what matters most. They stopped chasing endless accumulation and started protecting their independence. Because in the end, nobody wishes they had attended more meetings. Nobody wishes they had spent more time impressing strangers. Nobody wishes they had traded more years for things they never truly needed. What people cherish are moments, relationships, experiences, time. And money is valuable because it helps protect those things, not because it replaces them. The purpose of money isn't to become a servant to wealth. The purpose of money is to become free. Free to think, free to choose, free to live according to your own values. And once you truly understand that, another question naturally appears. If freedom is so valuable, if uncertainty is unavoidable, if life can change without warning, shouldn't we prepare for events we cannot predict? Shouldn't we build protection for the unknown? That's exactly why the next lesson may be one of the most practical in the entire book. Save money for a reason you can't yet see. Chapter 7. Save money without a reason. Imagine, you're walking through a forest. The path is clear, the weather is perfect. Your destination is visible. Everything feels predictable. Then, without warning, the sky darkens. Rain begins to fall. The trail disappears beneath thick mud. Your map is suddenly useless, and in an instant, the journey has changed. Life works the very same way. Most of us wake up believing tomorrow will look a lot like today. We make plans, we create budgets, we map out careers, we imagine our future. And then life does what it has always done. It surprises us. A company downsizes, a loved one gets sick, an unexpected opportunity appears, a recession arrives, a global crisis changes everything. And in moments like these, one question matters more than almost any other. Do you have options? Because when uncertainty arrives, money becomes something far greater than currency. It becomes breathing room. It becomes flexibility. It becomes time. One of the most powerful ideas in the psychology of money is surprisingly simple. Save money without needing a specific reason. At first, that sounds almost strange. Most financial advice tells us to save for clearly defined goals: a house, a car, retirement, education. And those goals absolutely matter. But Morgan Housel offers a different perspective. Some of the most valuable savings aren't connected to any specific goal. They're reserved for the unknown. Why? Because the biggest events in your life are often the ones you could never have predicted. Think back 5 years. Could you have accurately predicted every major event that shaped your life? Probably not. Most people can't. The promotion, the setback, the opportunity, the challenge, the relationship, the unexpected expense. Life rarely follows the script we write for it. Yet many people build financial plans as though the future has already been written, and that's dangerous. Imagine two people. The first spends every dollar they earn. Their budget is perfectly optimized. Nothing is wasted. Every rupee has a destination. On paper, everything looks efficient. The second person quietly saves, every month, even when there's no obvious reason, even when friends ask, why? Even when the money seems to be doing nothing at all. Years pass. Then one day, an opportunity appears. A business idea, a dream project, a career change, an investment that wasn't available before. Who can act immediately? The person with savings. Because savings don't just protect you from problems, they allow you to seize opportunities, and opportunities rarely announce their arrival. That's something many people overlook. They think savings are purely defensive, a shield against emergencies. But savings are also offensive. They allow you to move when others are frozen, to act when others hesitate, to choose when others have no choice. Imagine a young employee, talented, hardworking, ambitious. But every morning, he dreads going to work. His job drains his energy. Every week feels longer than the last. Yet, he stays. Not because he wants to, because he has to. Bills don't wait. Responsibilities don't disappear. Now imagine Another employee living the same story. But this person has built a financial cushion, several months of living expenses, savings, investments, breathing room. Suddenly, everything changes. That savings account is no longer just money. It's leverage, it's confidence, it's freedom. The freedom to leave a bad situation, the freedom to search for something better, the freedom to make decisions from strength instead of fear. That's why savings are so powerful. They purchase flexibility, and flexibility is priceless in an unpredictable world. History teaches this lesson again and again. Every financial crisis, every recession, every economic shock, they reveal the same pattern. People with no margin become vulnerable. People with reserves become resilient. The future has always been uncertain, and it always will be. The goal isn't to predict uncertainty. The goal is to prepare for it. And preparation doesn't require perfection. It requires humility. The humility to admit, I don't know what's coming. Most people spend enormous energy trying to predict the future. The wisest people accept that prediction has limits. Instead of trying to forecast every storm, they build stronger shelters. Savings are one of those shelters, quietly waiting in the background, never asking for attention, never earning applause, yet often becoming the difference between panic and confidence when life changes without warning. Perhaps that's why saving money is so psychologically powerful. It's never just about the money. It's about peace of mind. It's about sleeping better. It's about reducing fear. It's about knowing that when life surprises you, you're ready. Because it will. Not someday. Eventually. For everyone. The person who understands this doesn't see savings as unused money. They see it as stored flexibility, stored opportunity, stored freedom. And that single shift changes everything. But there is one final ingredient that ties every lesson together. One force connecting: wealth, freedom, compounding, and resilience. A force that separates those who build lasting success from those who are forced to start over again and again. It isn't intelligence, it isn't talent, it isn't luck. It's the ability to think beyond today, to see years ahead, to remain committed while others become distracted, to understand that life's greatest rewards rarely belong to those who move the fastest. They belong to those who are willing to wait. And that's where our next lesson begins, the power of long-term thinking. Chapter 8. The power of long-term thinking. Imagine planting an oak tree. On the first day, nothing remarkable happens. A week later, nothing remarkable happens. A month later, still nothing remarkable happens. If success were measured only by immediate results, you might believe the seed had failed. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary is already happening. Roots are growing. Strength is developing. A foundation is taking shape. The tree is quietly preparing for a future no one can yet see. Wealth works the same way. And this is where most people lose. Not because they aren't capable, not because they're unlucky, but because they're impatient. We live in a world obsessed with speed. Instant messages, instant delivery, instant entertainment, instant results. Everywhere we look, we're taught that faster is better. So naturally, we expect wealth to work the same way. We want dramatic transformation, rapid success, visible progress. And when those things don't arrive quickly, frustration takes over. We quit. We change strategies. We chase the next opportunity. We begin again and again. Meanwhile, the people quietly building wealth are doing something that looks almost boring. They're staying the course. They're remaining patient. They're allowing time to do the heavy lifting. Morgan Housel argues that long-term thinking is one of the most underrated advantages in finance. Because while everyone else is reacting to today's headlines, long-term thinkers are focused on decades. Let's try a simple thought experiment. Imagine two investors. The first checks the market every hour. Every headline changes his mood. Every decline creates anxiety. Every rally creates excitement. His decisions constantly change. Now imagine a second investor. She understands that markets rise and fall, booms come and go, fear comes and goes, optimism comes and goes. But over long periods, progress has a remarkable habit of moving forward. So she stays invested. She remains patient. She ignores the noise. Who do you think ends up with better results? History suggests it's usually the second investor. Not because she's smarter, because she's more patient. Patience is one of the few advantages available to everyone. It doesn't require talent, education, connections, or special intelligence, yet very few people possess it. Why? Because patience is emotionally difficult. The market falls, people panic. The economy slows, people panic. A new trend appears, people abandon their plan. The challenge isn't knowing what to do. The challenge is continuing to do it. Think back to Ronald Read. For decades he invested quietly. The world changed around him. Presidents came and went. Wars were fought. Recessions arrived. Markets crashed. Technology transformed society. And through it all, he continued. Not because he could predict the future, because he didn't need to. He understood something profound. The future will always be uncertain. But time is incredibly powerful. And when time meets discipline, remarkable things become possible. Now, zoom out even further. Imagine looking at the stock market over a single day. The movement looks chaotic, random, unpredictable. Now, zoom out to 1 year. The picture becomes a little clearer. Now 10 years, now 20, now 50. Suddenly the noise begins to disappear and a pattern emerges. Progress, not perfect progress, not uninterrupted progress, but progress nonetheless. This lesson doesn't apply only to investing. It applies to careers, health, relationships, learning, to almost everything that truly matters. The greatest rewards often belong to those willing to endure the longest seasons of uncertainty. The writer who keeps writing before anyone notices. The entrepreneur who keeps building before success arrives. The athlete who keeps training before the medals come. The investor who keeps investing before wealth becomes visible. Long-term thinking requires faith, not blind faith. Faith in the process, faith in consistency, faith that small actions repeated over many years eventually become impossible to ignore. And perhaps that's the deepest lesson in this entire book. Most extraordinary outcomes are built from ordinary behavior, sustained over extraordinary periods of time. The millionaire wasn't created in a day. The successful company wasn't built in a month. A strong marriage wasn't formed in a year. A meaningful life wasn't assembled overnight. Everything valuable compounds. Knowledge compounds. Relationships compound. Reputation compounds. Habits compound. And wealth compounds. The challenge is that compounding asks us to trust what we cannot yet see, to keep planting seeds before the harvest arrives, to remain committed while others become distracted, to think in years while the world is obsessed with minutes. And now, our story returns to where it all began, a quiet town in Vermont, a janitor most people never noticed, because when we compare his life with the lives of brilliant financiers who lost everything, we discover a lesson far greater than investing, a lesson about behavior, a lesson about character, a lesson about what truly creates wealth. And in the end, that lesson has very little to do with money itself. Let's bring everything together. Let's return to where our story began. 2 funerals, 2 lives. 2 men who spent decades walking very different paths. On one side stood a janitor, a man most people never noticed. He wasn't famous. He wasn't powerful. He never appeared on magazine covers. He never stood on a stage teaching others how to become successful. To the world, he looked completely ordinary. On the other side stood a brilliant banker, highly educated, deeply respected, a master of finance, the kind of person everyone expected to win. If you had met both men at the beginning of their lives and someone asked, which one will become truly wealthy? Most of us would have pointed to the banker, without hesitation. And yet, life had written a different ending. Why? Because wealth has never been a test of intelligence. It's a test of behavior. That is the quiet truth at the heart of the psychology of money. The janitor didn't win because he knew more. He won because he needed less. He understood that enough is a form of wealth. He understood that patience is often more valuable than brilliance. He understood that freedom is worth more than status. He understood that saving creates choices. And above all, he understood that time is life's greatest investor. While the world searched for shortcuts, he trusted small decisions made consistently. While others chased the next big opportunity, he stayed where wisdom had already led him. While others worked hard to look wealthy, he quietly became wealthy. And perhaps that's the greatest irony of all. The people who look rich are not always wealthy. And the people who are truly wealthy often look completely ordinary. Because real wealth doesn't shine. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to prove itself. Real wealth is silent. It's the investment account nobody sees, the emergency fund nobody applauds, the discipline nobody notices, the quiet decision made over and over and over again, long after the excitement has disappeared. So now for just a moment, forget the janitor, forget the banker. Think about your own life. Years from now, when someone tells your story, what will they say? Will they remember the car you drove, the phone you carried, the watch on your wrist? Probably not. They'll remember how you lived, the choices you made, the people you loved, the peace you carried, the freedom you created. Because in the end, money is never the destination. It's only a tool that can buy something priceless: time. The freedom to wake up without fear, the freedom to choose how you spend your days, the freedom to walk away from what steals your peace, the freedom to be present for the people who matter most. Maybe that's what wealth really is, not having more than everyone else, but needing less than you once believed. Not chasing every opportunity, but having the wisdom to recognize which opportunities are worth your life. Because life isn't measured by the size of your portfolio. It's measured by the moments your money allowed you to protect. A quiet dinner with your family, a morning without anxiety, a walk without checking your bank balance, a life where your choices belong to you. If this book teaches us anything, it's this: money doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. It rewards patience. It exposes ego. It tests character. And in the end, it quietly asks one question. Not how much did you earn, not how much did you own, but did your money help you build a life you were proud to live? So the next time you see an expensive car, remember that's spending, not necessarily wealth. The next time progress feels too slow, remember compounding is usually invisible until one day it isn't. The next time life feels uncertain, remember savings are more than money. They are peace of mind. And when the world keeps whispering, more success, more possessions, more status, more, pause for just a moment and ask yourself one question. What does enough look like for me? Because your answer may become the most valuable investment you ever make. Ronald Read found his answer, not in a luxury car, not in a mansion, not in the applause of strangers. He found it in patience, in discipline, in quiet consistency, and that is why a humble janitor left behind something greater than millions. He left behind a way to live. Because the richest life isn't the one that owns the most. It's the one that wakes up without fear, the one that has time for the people it loves, the one that can choose peace over pressure, the one that needs less to feel complete. Thank you for spending your time with me. If this story changed the way you think about money, share it with someone you care about. Because money compounds, habits compound, wisdom compounds. And sometimes, one idea, one decision made today can quietly change the direction of an entire life. Until next time, take care of your money. But even more importantly, take care of the life you're using it to build. Thank you for spending these moments with me. In a world that's constantly telling us to move faster, earn more, and chase the next big thing, I hope this story encouraged you to slow down, to think a little deeper, and to build a life that's rich in more than just money. If today's story left you with even one idea that changed the way you see the world, don't let it end here. Share it with someone you care about. Because sometimes one conversation, one book, or one simple idea arriving at exactly the right moment can quietly change the direction of an entire life. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Every week, we explore timeless ideas about wealth, psychology, discipline, history, human behavior, and the quiet principles behind extraordinary lives. Not to help you get rich overnight, but to help you build wisdom that lasts a lifetime. Until next time, invest in your mind, protect your time, guard your freedom, because the greatest returns in life rarely appear on a bank statement. They appear in the choices you make, the character you build, and the person you become. I'll see you in the next one.